Welcome to the Hashimoto's Doctor Podcast. You're now part of a growing community of people determined to take their health back through education and self-empowerment. But because of the healthcare system today, we don't have access to the types of healthcare that we want. So we have to do things differently. We've got to do things smarter, and we do that by becoming our own advocates. This podcast will give you the perspective and thoughts of one of the world's leading Hashimoto's doctors. So let's get started. Hi everyone, Dr. Shook here. I hope you're doing well today. In today's podcast, I want to talk to you about a very important topic, and this is the TSH myth. And this is really important because most of your doctors that are conventionally trained, that are all trying to help you with the very best intentions, they utilize the laboratory range for TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone, to give them an idea of whether or not you have a thyroid-related problem. And if you are within that range, then it's, based on their training and the standards that they follow and that they're really expected to follow, quite frankly, they determine you to be to have adequate thyroid function and normal thyroid function. So basically, there's no problem there. But it's really interesting when you look at this and some of the research that's been done, and what we see clinically when practicing, more of an alternative model. That's what I practice is a blend of precision medicine and epigenetics and functional medicine. When you look at this and you look at some of the literature that's out there, it's not quite as clear as just having, being within the normal range. And so let me share with you a study that was done. This was in 2002, the National Academy of Clinical Biochemistry, so it's the NACB, they actually came out and suggested that there be new guidelines for diagnosing thyroid disease. And what they said was that basically when they looked at TSH and they looked at the general population, that the range is probably too wide. They said, this could be too wide. We may be missing some of the people that have problems with their thyroid if by going by these ranges, which, the ranges that most people use is you're normal, they consider you normal if your TSH is below 4.5, right? When we're talking about hypothyroidism. With hypothyroidism, like low thyroid function, if the TSH is high, so above 4.5, let's say, then they consider you to be hypothyroid. Okay, if you're below 4.5, if you're within the laboratory range, then they consider you to have normal thyroid function. And they're looking at something called TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. It's made by your pituitary gland. It is a signaling hormone to the thyroid to make more of your T4 and T3, your primary thyroid hormones. Okay, so if it's high, if TSH is high, then the brain is trying to signal the thyroid to produce more hormone because there's a greater need for it. That's the thought process and the rationale behind looking at it. So doctors primarily just order TSH as a screening tool, and that's the accepted standard of care. So they're doing everything that they can, and they want to help you. So let's just get that straight. I'm not suggesting that they don't want to help you for some reason. They absolutely 100% do. But again, the model that they practice limits them to this, and their training guides them this way, and the standards of care that they're trained to uphold go by these guidelines. So they do what they're taught and what they're told to do and what they think is in your best interest. So unless they're practicing a more alternative approach that looks at things a bit differently, this is kind of what you're going to get as far as a treatment approach goes. But the National Academy of Clinical Biochemists said, TSH is probably too wide, and there's some research here, newer research, suggesting that those large ranges may actually include people that have, borderline thyroid-related problems. So when you have such a broad range, you might actually get people in there that you're calling normal that aren't normal, that actually have thyroid dysfunction. So what they did was they did a screening to try and exclude and, eliminate those people that had borderline hypothyroid symptoms, right? So the people that were on the fringes there. And what they saw was that when they looked at the data, that 95% of the people tested, okay, 95%. So the 95 out of 100 people in the general population actually had a TSH level between about 0.4 and 2.5. 0.4 and 2.5, okay? Now, when you added that extra 5%, you got people that had these, TSH that may be at 20, like significantly higher, that were skewing this range and making it more broad. So what their recommendation and their suggestion was that, a more normal and ideal range is probably 0.4 to 2.5, and that when you start getting above that, you're going to start including people within normal, or considering people in a normal population with normal function that may not be. So this is, from a functional perspective, this is one of the things that I do is we use, we want to utilize and look at a more narrow range. I mean, I actually apply more narrow ranges to most of the biochemical markers we're looking at to say, okay, is this a more optimal function? You can't diagnose anything from it, but you can definitely consider it, and you can look at it and say, okay, is this more optimal physiology, or is this more suggestive of suboptimal, where it may not be normal, and if so, why? And then you start looking a little bit deeper, right? So this is really important. I mean, I think this is incredibly important because most people are being evaluated. Their TSH is being evaluated as the driving factor, behind whether or not they have a thyroid problem. And a lot of people are, I think, their thyroid problems are being missed because of the use of such a broad range. So we've got to rethink, I think our approach in clinical practice so that we can better understand what's going on. So anyway, this is, one of the things that was basically also came from this was that every individual has unique thyroid function. They have, we have to consider every person as an individual. We can't just lump them all into this one group, and that's really what we find. And I understand for a lot of different reasons TSH is a quick and more affordable screening tool, but we've got to look at this with a more critical eye. And it's because what ends up happening is we see people that fall within these ranges, right? This, let's say 0.5 to 4.5 as a range for TSH, and they're not necessarily normal, even though they're considered normal. This person may have thyroid dysfunction, and we're lumping them in there. I think what we have to do is we have to look at these more narrow ranges of, something more along the lines of 0.4 to 2.5, and use that as if they fall outside of that range, then higher than 2.5, then we have to raise our eyebrow and say, what, could this be a problem? Might I need to do a little bit more in-depth testing with them? I think that would probably be a better approach to help us uncover more of these thyroid dysfunction, and really help a lot more people, because I think millions of people are probably with thyroid problems are getting lumped into the normal, and I see this all the time, unfortunately. But a lot of these problems may not be the problem may not be treatable with a thyroid hormone replacement. We see it a lot where the physiology is breaking down in other ways that's contributing to this dysfunction. So you've got to look at all the physiology and consider other systems of the body that may be creating an impact here, and try to come up with a plan that's unique to the individual and their individual needs. And I think that's one of the best approaches that we can take. But anyway, I hope that this has been helpful in better understanding, TSH and some of the nuances and the complexities here. But I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me today. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to my team and I. We'll do everything that we can to help you. But it's my mission to help improve your life. I know if I can improve your life, that we can have a positive impact on your family, your community, and ultimately change the world one person at a time. But I appreciate you hanging out with me today, and look forward to talking to you guys again soon. Thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed hanging out behind the scenes with Dr. Shook. You can also talk with and learn from Dr. Shook through Facebook Live on our Facebook page at the Office of Dr. Brad Shook. Don't forget, you can also get access to our videos, guidebooks, and thyroid programs at www.drbradshook.com. Oh yeah, and don't forget one more thing. We can change the world one person, one family, and one community at a time. Until next time, remember, today is your day, and no one will tell you who you are and what you can be.